And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Thursday, December 8th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by BetMGM. 3-game slate. Easy stuff here on this Thursday. Excited to talk a little bit of basketball. I had to pop into chat during the strategy show and let Rinpak know how wrong he is, thinking that Giannis has already passed Dirk Nowitzki as the best European NBA player of all time. Lunacy. But don't worry, I was there to save the day. But now we can do it on the Deeper Dive if we want, which I don't think Adam wants to do anyway. So
no, and
let's start
here,
here.
Though I did get the correct answer,
which is Dirk.
Yeah,
correct.
I mean, it was just
absolutely
like I said to him, I've given it zero thought. So if somebody wanted to present an argument, like I'm not going to give much of one back, but just my immediate answer to the question was just like Dirk.
It's the only answer. He played 50-something thousand minutes. That's 30,000 more than Giannis. I think the replacement level on Dirk there is going to be a little bit higher than that. So hit the like button, by the way. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. It will be Giannis when it's all said and done, unless something really, really bad happens to him. But
what's his face that comes in next year?
Wembanyama?
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna pump the brakes on that one a little bit too.
Right, but I'm saying like it's like anything else. It's gonna be Giannis until it's not. Like
sure,
it's just how.
Well, I mean, to play as many minutes as Dirk played is that's hard. That's the real stopping point there. To be able to play 55,000 NBA minutes is not an easy task.
Yeah, and somebody said Mario Hezonja. I mean, I'm still waiting for Jan Vesely to come around.
I bet you are. They're probably still in the draft rights too.
Oh no, he came over. He just wasn't good.
Yeah, I still think they have his rights actually.
Oh, like if he decided for whatever reason he wanted to play in the NBA at 42?
Something like that. Is Oladipo dust? We're about to find out. Interesting slate. I have not gotten a chance to talk about it yet other than the process show and contenders, but a couple things have changed since then. So I'm kind of excited to break this one down. You ready to get this one started?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Oh, Kyle Lowry, I guess.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. No, I couldn't even think of what it changed, but yeah, that changed.
Wait, it's not just Kyle Lowry. Terrence Mann too, to a degree.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
That's another Another chunk of minutes that are out of a lineup. And just make sure I have the most updated ownership projections. And I do. So let's get it started. The Los Angeles Clippers, sorry, the LA Clippers. I said that one incorrectly. I get it wrong all the time. It's so annoying. They are the LA Clippers. 4-point dogs in Miami, 215.5 total for the Clippers. Some news, like I said, I've already announced this one, but we have no Kawhi, which is no surprise. Norm Powell still out. Terrence Mann now out. He was in earlier today. We are going to get Paul George, Marcus Morris, John Wall, and Luke Kennard. So let's start with the easy one. What is your expectation of the starting lineup for the Clippers today?
So it was Terrence Mann. Now my expectation is Jackson, George, Coffee, Morris, Zubats.
Okay. Not as confident there. I think it could be Kennard.
I'm not confident either, but
my assumption is Kennard over Coffee, but
yeah,
again, not something I'm super confident. I don't care. We're going to know it at 7 o'clock one way or the other, and it's a 3-game slate. So it is mostly meaningless, but it does inform me liking Luke Kennard a little bit more than what we are currently projecting. Let's start with Paul George, 9,200 on DraftKings, shooting guard, small forward eligible, 8,600 on FanDuel, shooting guard, small forward eligible. That said, I'm a little nervous. I don't really like him, and I don't know why. And that's the weirdest part, because he is pulling ownership, 20% on DraftKings, 35 on FanDuel. Do you like Paul George today?
Yes, but I do think that, I'm a little nervous there just because it is a back-to-back, and I assume he's going to play 32, 33 minutes. Certainly could play more. The fact he didn't play in overtime yesterday is somewhat concerning to me. Because, we've talked about it before when, you'll see somebody coming back from an injury and they'll run them out there in garbage time for 5 extra minutes. And it's like, oh, clearly they are really looking to ramp this up. The fact that he didn't play in overtime makes me think that they were very hard on that 32 to 33 minutes and he's not going to play more. So I don't know if that was just, it's the front end of a back-to-back and we're going to have him go play 34 tomorrow, or if it was just, he's going to play 32, 33. Either way, with it being a 3-game slate, I think he's a good play because if you give him 32 minutes, he is a good play. And there's some non-zero chance that he does play more today. But I would certainly feel better if they had just let him go out there in overtime and then he had the same energy after the game where he's just like, oh yeah, no, I'm playing tomorrow too. It would have been like, okay, cool. There's no restrictions here. But he's still been about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy without Kawhi on the floor. I think the price tags are still cheap enough and it's a 3-game slate. So I still like him.
So I have him a little bit lighter than that. I got him in at 1.14 FanDuel points per minute for this game. And he ends up grading out really poorly for me. What do you have him at for total DraftKings points? I don't think you're going to be too much higher than me.
I mean, I'm just looking at our projections right now. So
what do we have him at?
40.
Okay. I got him at 37.5. So I do think that I am slightly more pessimistic than others at 32 minutes. To me, that looks bad. I'm having trouble getting to him, even at the $8,600 price tag on FanDuel. It makes me feel weird, but at the same time, we're talking about a matchup against the Heat. Not ideal. They're the 26th team in pace. So we're talking about a relatively slower pace game. The Clippers, in my model, are 22nd in pace. I don't love this environment for Paul George, but I don't want to be the person that's like, hey, by the way, with Kawhi out and him pulling a bunch of ownership, don't play the star on the Clippers.
And I mean, to your point too, I just mentioned we have him at 40 DraftKings points, which at 9,200 isn't anything special. It's just, obviously fine. That's also in 34 minutes. And you can definitely make an argument that that's a little aggressive. So I agree with you in that there are definitely red flags here on Paul George. But for me, it also just comes back to being a 3-game slate and him being reasonably priced. And I assume I'm just still going to end up playing a good amount of Paul George.
Well, here's my question for you. Would you rather play Paul George at 9,200 or Dame Lillard at 9,700 today?
So George, I think, is just going to fit into lineups better. He's shooting guard, small forward on DraftKings. Sure. So that's kind of the thing is, if it were Paul George, point guard 9,200, Dame, point guard 9,700, I think it'd be really close. I'd probably lean Dame. But that positional aspect, I think, is still going to make George show up a little bit more.
Who's more interesting to you, Paul George or Anthony Simons?
Paul George.
Simons, $500 cheaper.
Paul George.
Okay. Jimmy Butler, $600 cheaper. Are they all that different today? Because I like Butler more than I like Paul George.
I think they're pretty similar.
Okay. I got Butler by a little bit here. So we'll get to Butler in a little. As of right now, I think that I'm going to be very light on Paul George. I'm nervous about the minutes. He's clearly a guy that can just make me look wrong in 32 minutes. the talent is there. This is not a play against the talent of Paul George. I'm just very concerned about how much he could actually be out there and the ownership that he's already pulling.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I go back and forth. I agree with everything you're saying. I also just think with it being a 3-game slate, he's just easy enough to get into lineups that he's still a good play. The ownership obviously is also higher on FanDuel, cheaper price tag too. But yeah, it's if he plays, if you know for sure he's playing like 32 minutes, full stop, doesn't matter what happens, that's it. I think the ownership is too high just because you can only do so much damage in 32 minutes. Obviously he can break the slate in 32 minutes, but it's pretty unlikely. But there is some non-zero chance that it's, just like, oh yeah, well now he's going to play 34 or 35. And, if he's basically correctly priced for 32 minutes, then clearly every extra minute he gets is underpriced. So I still think that it's really scary if you don't get there.
Yeah. Like on the FanDuel side, we also have Tyler Hero's $200 cheaper than him. I think that I prefer Tyler Hero. They are basically the same ownership there. So I don't know. It's going to be a spot where I'm different on Paul George, and I am not going to enjoy it. But I think just the game environment and his current status coming back from injury, playing 32 minutes, it's all scaring me quite a bit. Let's talk about the rest of the Clippers then. We've got Marcus Morris projected for 10% ownership on DraftKings. We have John Wall at 13%, 5,900. Both of those guys are even more owned on FanDuel. It's 23 and 23 across both of them. I don't have a huge interest in 23% owned $5,900 John Wall on FanDuel either, but again, doesn't make me feel great. I just don't really like the Clippers in general.
I do like the prices though.
Okay.
So that's sort of the thing. And it's sort of the same conversation we just had with Paul George. I don't like the matchup. And, in George's case, I don't like that he's probably still on some sort of a minutes limit, but I do like the pricing. You mentioned John Wall. I think that there's a chance man being out gets you a couple extra minutes of Wall alongside Jackson. The last game that Wall played, we saw them do that a lot. Overall this year, in the games that he's played where George has been in, Jackson has been in, and Kawhi has been out, Wall has averaged 23.3 minutes per game and about 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Like, he's been really good when he's on the floor. If you expect him to get around 24 minutes, he's just going to look like a pretty decent option at this price. I think the ownership pretty much is where it should be. Right now on DraftKings, we have Wall 13.3% ownership, 13.4% optimal, basically perfect. And Morris, I think, is similar. 5,500 on DraftKings, 4,900 on FanDuel. He's averaged 32 minutes per game in the games he's played without Kawhi and with George. He's averaged 0.88 fantasy points per minute. He's just looks fine. I'm not going into the slate saying like, oh man, I can't believe Marcus Morris is 10% owned. But at the same time, I think he's a good play to sort of just round out your lineups.
I mean, you basically detailed it for me. Like, I gave John Wall 24 minutes. I got him at 1.09 FanDuel points per minute. So a little bit of a discount because of the slow pace for the per minute rate. 23, he's in a quarter of the FanDuel lineups right now, which we agree with in the boom bust tool. We have his optimal odds at 25%. He's 5,900. That, to me, that's like a very specific game. I don't know how many minutes he's actually going to be out there. I do think he's got that upper bound of probably 28. That's another set of ownership that just sort of scares me on FanDuel.
Yeah, he was in my FanDuel tournament plays video earlier because we had him projected to go under own. But like, even as I did it, it was just like, I get why we have him going under own because the ceiling is so high if he happens to play a few extra minutes. But at the same time, like, you could just get a 22-minute John Wall game at nearly 6K.
Yeah, like, more often than not, that is exactly what we do get from John Wall. Like, it's not like we've just seen him coming out here playing like 28 every other day and like we've got this like aggressive volatility. At some point in time, it's probably going to ramp up, and that could be today. But like this, right. This Clippers team scares the hell out of me today.
If you get the John Wall rotations that you got in the last game he played, John Wall looks great. He played 27 minutes. He closed alongside Reggie Jackson, who played 32 minutes. That's a game that Kawhi was in, Paul George was in, Morris was in. So Kennard was in. They didn't have Norman Powell. So it's basically, there's nothing really different today except they're more shorthanded. So I don't think it's crazy to think you can get that same kind of game. And that 23.3 minute average that I mentioned does include earlier in the year when Wall was not playing alongside Jackson at all. So I do think it's reasonable to go a little bit heavier here. You just have to keep in mind that you're still going to get those games where it's like, oh, they decided not to play him alongside Reggie Jackson much today.
Yeah. The guy that I'm interested in on FanDuel, and so much of it will matter for the starting lineup, so it's hard to really dictate it. Luke Kennard's the flat minimum, shooting guard, small forward, 3,500. If it's him, like, he's the guy that I'm interested in. We have him at 9% ownership right now. That's not going to be what he is if he's named the starter. But even in 22, 23, we saw him play 20 minutes on Monday. Like, as a pay down option, given what's out, Luke Kennard is interesting to me at the flat minimum on FanDuel if he's going to be a single digit owned guy in comparison to some of the ownership I'm seeing from the Clippers.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I also, I said at the top that my guess was that Coffey would start. I'm not confident in that at all. And I mentioned it then, but like in their last game, Coffey didn't even play. Kennard did. So I don't know, my guess again is that they just throw Coffey in as like the placeholder in the starting lineup, but it could be Kennard, in which case you could bump up his minutes as well. If he does come off the bench, I think you're probably looking at 22, 24 minutes, potentially more if he plays well. So I'm with you as far as, a low-owned tournament play. I think he makes some sense. What do you think the closing lineup is?
George. Yep. Got it. Nailed it. George. Definitely Paul George. George, Zubats, Morris, Jackson, it probably insert fifth guy here. Hot hand.
Yeah, so my thinking is that it's probably Wall, and if it's not Wall, it's probably Kennard.
Yeah. Let me think about it here. Well, so it's obviously not Terrence Mann.
Like I said last game, it was Wall, but it was at the very end. Wall subbed in for the last 2 minutes in place of Ivica Zubats.
Doesn't seem like that would be the case now. They could go to Morris at the 5. Like, that is viable. Every single person except for Moses Brown would make sense to me.
Right. Well, I don't think you're getting a lot of like Batum plus Morris plus Zubats lineups.
No, but like, it's also not the craziest situation in the world.
No.
We got a full overtime of Robert Covington the last time out. And this dude, like, sometimes doesn't play. So there's also that weird because shit.
They were refusing to play 2 of their main players.
Right. George, Zubats, Morris. Oh, man.
Refusing to play 2 of their main players and also had benched or sat out like several others prior to the game.
Yeah. That's part of the reason I don't trust the Clippers. And to me, I want to get away from ownership. Like, I don't know how much I trust it at all.
See, I think it kind of goes both ways though. Cause like I get your point there, but like when you talk about somebody like Wall, if you project him for 24 minutes, I think that like 13% ownership makes sense. If he gets to 26 or 28 minutes, he's way too low owned, which, if he plays 20, he's over owned. But like, I think that volatility is there in both directions.
So I think we're talking about this in 2 different ways, because I agree with you that 13% for John Wall is not crazy on DraftKings. I think 23% for John Wall on FanDuel is too much.
But like he's also the same price on FanDuel he is on DraftKings, so relatively that's cheaper. Sure. He also has point guard, shooting guard on FanDuel.
He does. I hate the game environment. 215.5 total is 10 points short of Denver, Portland, basically 20 points short of Houston, San Antonio. I just prefer the other games more than I like this one. And the question mark that's hanging over the head of most of these guys is the real thing that's slowing me down here. As of right now, I am under the field on basically everyone except for we have Zubats at 8% owned on FanDuel. I have double that. And like, that's not one that I'm going to have any qualms with.
Yeah. If you, in general, if you just take a quick glance and you're talking about the team with the 103 implied total on a slate where every other team is like 110 plus, then, obviously you should have some concerns.
Yeah. It's a really, really tricky matchup. What do you want to do with any of these other guys? Like, where are you landing on Reggie Jackson or Batum, Coffey? Like, are those guys anything other than just like filler?
No, I think they're filler, but I do think the Reggie Jackson point is interesting. I'd already seen somebody say in chat that he plays more minutes than Wall. The thing you have to be careful with there is there's 2 parts to that equation: is it's minutes and what you do in those minutes, and he's nowhere near the same
No.
production as Wall. But you should be projecting him to play more minutes than Wall, and he's still going to have his games where he just makes shots and it becomes Reggie Jackson doing, things like we saw last year at times, or the year before that, whatever year it was that he had that stretch where he actually looked really good. So like the upside is interesting there when you're saying, okay, Reggie Jackson is $200 less expensive than John Wall on DraftKings. He's getting 1/3 the ownership, and he's probably going to play like 4 to 6 minutes more. Like I understand why Wall's getting more ownership because, again, points per minute is a thing, but that's a really interesting spot to get to at low ownership.
How many minutes do you think they're playing alongside each other today?
I mean, I'm kind of inclined to lean towards a similar rotation to what they did last game. You got 31 from a little over 31 from Jackson. You got
27.
Oh yeah, I'm looking. I had the wrong game put up. Yeah, 27 from Wall. Maybe you don't get those last two from Wall. So I think something like 6 minutes is reason. 4 to 6 minutes is reasonable.
Okay, I got him at 29.25, so that's 6 minutes. So I think we're on the same page for these guys.
Yeah. When he closed, for what it's worth, when he closed the first half, it was over. Him and Kennard closed over Kawhi and George. That was the game that they were, both limited to 28 minutes.
Which is obviously interesting.
Yeah.
Good luck on the Clippers today, folks.
It kind of just reinforces for me, I think that the closer today is either Wall or Kennard.
Yeah.
In place of Kawhi.
On the off chance that Luke Kennard starts, what are you giving him from a minutes perspective?
I'd probably go to like 26, 28.
Yeah. You can't just let it rip with him.
Right. I don't want to go too crazy with it because I know that they will just insert random other wing and he will play backup minutes. But yeah, certainly would go from like 22 to 24 off the bench to 26, 28 starting.
Moses Brown?
I was going to ask you, so do you think he plays all of the backup center minutes? Because
No.
Okay.
No. I gave him 14, and then I left 4 for Marcus Morris.
Okay, I'll say that might even be more aggressive than I end up going.
Okay.
Because I don't know if they're going to completely kick out Covington or not.
I gave Covington 14 as well. So, I mean, you call whoever you want the center there for the Morris-Covington overlap.
Yeah.
I don't really have a preference for which one we're calling is getting those 4. But I didn't want to project Moses Brown. I mean, this is more of a situation for like how to play DFS than like how I actually think the Clippers rotation goes. I didn't want to project Moses Brown for 10 minutes and then just have it be meaningless. Like I wanted to see if I could get to him even at the slightly reduced spot with 14, which sure. The answer is no on FanDuel because he's 3,900. But
right, DraftKings
that was more of a
start to be interesting there.
Yeah, it was more of a factor of just like trying to see if that made him anything.
Right. Yeah, because like again, kind of going back to 2 games ago for the rotation, because I don't want to read too much into yesterday since they were so shorthanded. But like you got 10 minutes from Brown in that game. He was the immediate sub in for Zubac in the first half. But then to start the second quarter, you got the lineup where it was Batum, George, and Kawhi in the front court with Wall and Terrence Mann. Yeah. So like if I expect that they had. I think they probably give enough minutes to some combination of Batum and Covington that you get a little bit less than 48 minutes from Zubac plus Brown.
1, 2, hold on. Give me 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so they have been going 10 guys, right? 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so they went 9 on Wednesday. Let's just say hypothetically they axe Covington again. Although, he has played in heavy minutes in 6 of their last 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 6 of their last 8. I don't think that happens, but do you think that's on the table?
That they play how many?
That they just axe Covington and they play 9, or I guess axe Brown and play 9. Either direction you want to go with that.
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible.
Okay.
So like they would be playing George, Wall, Morris, Zubac, Kennard, Jackson is 6. So you're saying 3 of Brown, Covington, Batum, Coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's likely. That's probably likely.
Okay. Yeah, because they went 9 on Wednesday. They went 10 on Monday. We'll see. Starting lineup, very important. Very important.
If Coffee starts, are you interested?
Probably not. I mean,
that's where I'm
like, look, 3-game slate. He is obviously in play to be rostered at 3,200 on DraftKings.
Yeah, the
But
guy also averages half a fantasy point per minute.
yeah, and I don't think that I'd be getting to much more than like 24 minutes because I don't think that Amir Coffey is closing today for any real scenario. So
I think if Amir
24 is like
Coffey
the
is
ceiling.
closing, you're probably also getting Moses Brown and Brandon Boston in a game where it's separated by 30 points.
Yep. All right, we hit on everything for the Clippers. I think they are the most complicated team to talk about. We'll switch it on over to the Miami side of this one. Kyle Lowry has been ruled out. Gabe Vincent is already out. Yurtseven already out. We've got a Q tag on Dwayne Dedmon, Q tag on Jimmy Butler. I'm making the assumption that both of those guys are in. We're getting 30% ownership to Hero on both sites. He is unquestionably my favorite Miami Heat guy, especially for 7,700 on DraftKings. I think he should be pulling even more ownership. Bam obviously looks good on both sites no matter what. I have no problem getting to Butler. Caleb Martin is a guy I hate a lot. I'm under the field on Caleb Martin, so it is very obvious what's happening here by the time we get to lock. I'm just going to open it up to you for Miami because they're just, to me, easier to talk about.
I'm very, very interested to see who starts in place of Lowry because I don't know. He hasn't missed a game this year. Who do you think it is?
My assumption is Hero, Bam, Butler, Martin, Strus.
I think that's likely. I think Highsmith is probably the second option.
And then there's we're about to get real squirrely. Here comes Victor Oladipo.
Yeah, we're going to get they've already said he's limited is the thing.
Yeah. I mean, you can be limited and start.
Sure. But I'm saying if they start him, it's not as if we hadn't already gotten he is limited for the foreseeable future and they were just like Oladipo starting, it would just be like, holy shit, like what, is he playing 16 minutes or is he playing 26? Obviously coaches lie all the time, so you still sort of have that issue if he were to start, but I'd still be pretty confident where it's like, okay, he's going to play like stints to open the game. But I'm with you. I think they probably go Strus. If not Strus, I think they probably go Highsmith. But yeah, I'm just curious to see who it is. But either way, I'm with you on really, really liking Tyler Hero here. Should have the ball in his hands more. Obviously, if Butler were to be ruled out, he looks even better. But assuming Butler is in, offense should basically be playing through Hero for a lot of their possessions. He should see more assist upside without Lowry. He's been rebounding great this year, which is really nice from just a floor standpoint, helps to solidify his production. Obviously, he's a good scorer, so and he's been playing huge minutes, and that shouldn't change tonight. So really like Hero. I think getting to Butler, getting to Bam is good as well. Caleb Martin is fine. If Strus starts at 5,400, he looks fine. Same goes for Highsmith at 3,500. But Hero, to me, the clear top guy, followed by Bam and Butler.
Okay. And those guys are real NBA players that should just always be rostered anyway. So I'm very interested in Miami. I'm getting to a lot of Miami. How do we want to handle the rest of these guys? Are you going back to the Caleb Martin well?
It's a 3-game slate, so yeah. Hopefully not 50% like last time.
Yep. I am under the 29% we're showing on FanDuel. He's 4,600 there. Assuming we're what?
No, somebody had said it in chat that Butler was ruled in, and I specifically looked for it and hadn't seen it, but we did get Butler expected to play.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I don't think that we have that, but...
Yeah, Butler expected to play, Dedmon expected to play, Hero, Strus, Oladipo, Robinson remain probable, Vassell out, Richardson, McDermott, Langford probable.
Good to know. All right, so let's just assume that it is the lineup that we said to start. Hero, Bam, Butler, Martin, Strus. What do you like that's not starting for Miami? Are you going to Highsmith? Are you going to Oladipo? 4,500 seems like a tough sell for him at that point.
Yeah, I think 4,500 is a pretty tough sell for Oladipo. He's pulling 4% ownership. So, again, if you want to just hope he gets hot for 18 minutes, then that's a reasonable number to gamble at. But still nothing I really want to get to. I think Highsmith at 3,500 is more interesting today than he was the other day, actually. I ended up, I understood why he was popular the other day. We had a lot of plays we wanted to pay for. We didn't have a lot of good value. You expected him to get the minutes. The issue is that he sucks on a per minute basis, and playing guys like that at 30% ownership is terrifying. So I ended up just sort of gambling on other guys that also ended up sucking. But when you get somebody like Highsmith that is likely to play 24 to 26 minutes at close to minimum salary and 3% ownership, I'm a lot more willing to just say, all right, well, normally he sucks, but maybe he'll play good today. Than when, 1/3 of the field is there. And it's like, okay, well, if I happen to get the random game that he plays well, I'm not even gaining any sort of advantage.
Highsmith 4K on FanDuel, going to be really hard for me to get there unless he gets named as a starter. I don't, and we've got Oladipo now at 11% ownership at 4K on FanDuel. Again, probably not a guy that I'm going to be super excited about. I think I could just take a shot in better game environments, but
I do like that Oladipo got 18 and a half minutes last game in his first game. I kind of expected it to be 15 to 16, and then they said he's going to be limited for the foreseeable future, but that doesn't mean the exact same limit. So if he had started at 15, 16, it'd be like, oh, maybe he gets 18 today. Shouldn't shock anybody if he just gets 20. And
I gave him 20.
Yeah, I think it's completely fine.
Yeah, so I have no interest in Robinson, Deadman, not for me. I don't have much else to say about Miami.
Yeah, that's who I was trying to think who the Highsmith pivot was the other day, and it was Josh Green, who also was awful.
Yes, he was. Curtis Shull hit us with the super chat. He said, who are the FanDuel single entry musts tonight? Nobody. But Keldon Johnson and Trey Jones are the two highest owned guys on the slate. Jalen Green is third. They are separating from the pack. They're all about 50% owned. If we're calling anything a must, to me, those three guys are the guys that I have my eye on. Tyler Hero would be a fourth if I'm trying to pay up.
Sure. SMP mentioned Duncan Robinson. Yeah, if he happens to get hot, maybe he steals some extra minutes. The issue is just that he's so buried in that rotation that he definitely needs to get hot to get more minutes, and then it's also still no guarantee that they actually give them to him. I would be more interested in going the Robinson route if Highsmith were getting more ownership. As is, I think they're both just sort of shitty fantasy guys that one of them I can feel comfortable is getting into the mid-20s, and one of them I have a hard time thinking is getting that much. But 3-game slate, guy is probably going to play. Was good at making shots at one point in his career. Zero ownership. It's not like a terrible large field tournament play, but it's probably not one I'll end up making.
Same. Anything else for Miami?
I don't think so.
All righty. Schedule for the rest of the day is simple. First, you hit the like button, and then we watch the like number go up. So let's get up to 250 if we can. Really shame the guys coming up after us. The guys coming up after us will be at 6:30 Eastern time. It's NBA Live Before Lock, folks. They'll take you all the way to 7:30. If you're interested in checking out what we have behind the paywall, there is a link in the description of this video. Please click it. Go sign up at Stokastic. You will get 3 days free so long as you have never signed up with us before. That's covering everything: projections, ownership, boom bust, our lineup generator. Everything that you'll hear us talk about on this show will be available to you, except for Fantasy Cruncher. But you'll have the lineup generator. It's even better for you. 3 days free. Link in the description. This is so simple for you guys. If you've never been here before, the link is there. Come join us. Peek your head in the Discord, see what's going on. Come say hi. I think, pretty clear best DFS game on the slate, the Houston Rockets 2.5-point favorites in San Antonio, 233 total. If you ever want to know how bad San Antonio is, the Rockets are favorites on the road in this one. We do have the giant Q tag hanging on top of Kevin Porter's head. Bruno Fernando also questionable. Josh Christopher also questionable, but Porter is the swing piece. If Porter is in though, Jalen Green pulling massive ownership. Porter pulling ownership and probably goes up if we get that news early enough. Jabari Smith is 25% owned. Eric Gordon's 20% owned. Şengün's getting 30 on DraftKings. These guys are all in the teens or 20s on FanDuel. You're just sort of loading up on Houston starters, I think.
Yeah. And that's, assuming Porter's in. If he's out, obviously these guys look even better. But you mentioned Jalen Green getting a ton of ownership at 6,900. Şengün at 5,800, I think, is almost more interesting to me. I realize that being center only is, more restrictive than point guard, shooting guard, but he hasn't really seen a change in his playing time since Fernando came back. We didn't know for sure what that center rotation was going to look like, since prior to Fernando's injury, he was starting ahead of Şengün, but they've had Şengün playing his normal starting rotation, and then you've just had Fernando sort of cutting into Garuba's backup center minutes. So as long as Şengün can avoid foul trouble, you should be getting 28 to 30 minutes from a guy that averages 1.2 DraftKings points per minute and is playing in a fantastic spot against San Antonio. So I really like Şengün at a falling price tag here. 32% ownership, obviously not going low owned or anything, just getting a little bit less than Green. Kevin Porter Jr., also kind of interesting to me that this is probably because of the Q tag, but we have him getting 25% ownership compared to Green's 40. Porter is $400 more, only has point guard eligibility, but Porter does average more fantasy points per minute. They average about the same minutes per game. I don't think we should end up seeing one of them get 1.5 times the ownership.
No, I think it's a Q tag thing. I manually bumped Porter up, so I stopped getting everything. But I've got Jalen Green and Porter in like 70 something percent of my lineups at this current spot, and it could be more if I didn't have to just manually override Porter. I'm also 2xing Şengün, so we're on the same page there. I'm getting to Jabari Smith quite a bit. He's 5,800 on FanDuel, even more interesting on DraftKings. 5K power forward center. There's not a lot that I don't like here, at least from the Houston starters. What are you doing with any of the bench guys? Are you getting to Martin, Eason, Knicks, any of the centers?
I think their bench is kind of interesting. Tari Eason's pulling 11% ownership. I don't expect a ton of minutes out of him. Typically you're basically just getting whatever minutes Jabari Smith isn't on the floor, which is typically 18.
Yep.
Maybe you'll get a couple minutes alongside them, alongside each other like you did last game. But the reason I think Eason is interesting is that it's a 3-game slate. He has a solidified role in the rotation, and he's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. I love going to guys like that where you're just trying to get lucky on their playing time, as opposed to trying to get lucky on playing time and then also get lucky where they outperform their normal production. With Eason, if he just plays his normal game and for any myriad of reasons plays 4 minutes more than usual or 5 minutes more than usual, he looks great. So I like guys like that where it's just like, all right, I just need to get lucky on somebody ahead of him getting in foul trouble, getting hurt. Whatever it may be, and he's probably just going to get it done at that point. So I am interested in him at only 11% ownership. Same can be said for KJ Martin. Not the same point per minute production as Tari Eason, but he is about a 0.85 DraftKings point per minute guy. And Martin is nice because basically anything happens to anybody and he gets more minutes. KJ Martin is just kind of like the Swiss Army knife guy that they throw in there because he can defend multiple positions. They have enough other guys that can, move to different positions where they just throw KJ Martin into the starting lineup whenever anybody is out. And it's likely that, if there's in-game foul trouble or in-game injury or anything like that, you just see those minutes for KJ Martin. So both of those guys at around 10% ownership are interesting to me just because the path to them being good is like so obvious. It's not going to take, you don't have to get that lucky. It's not the same as saying, like, oh, well, what if Ivica Zubac dies and then Covington gets in foul trouble and then Moses Brown plays 24 minutes? It's a lot. It's a really obvious path to how they can end up being good.
Well, I got to put that bad juju on Zubac, man. He's not even just like, oh, he sprained his ankle. He's like, no, he's just dead. Straight dead. Rough beat for Zubac here, man. Feel bad for him. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't done it already for the life of Ivica Zubac. Okay, let's just say
Josh Penn is bad at math.
Yeah. No, you mean science?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah,
all that nerd good. Shit.
Yeah, it's. I can only imagine what school was like. I don't assume the pen is
for
fun, that certainly not the university. That's for sure. No chance. No chance. Okay, let's just say for a second KPJ is out. You're just like cranking Green, Smith, Gordon, Şengün, Martin, Eason, even more than we already did. What will you do with Daishen Nix, 3,200 point guard, shooting guard?
I would play him. I think he would get more minutes. Again, my expectation if Porter is out is that KJ Martin joins the starting lineup and you slide Jalen Green to the 1, Eric Gordon to the 2. But either way, that would probably open up more minutes for Nix off the bench at only 3,200. So I would certainly play him either way. If he starts, then clearly he becomes a great value. I mentioned it with Rinpack this morning because he specifically asked me about Ty Washington. I do think if you get Porter out and they go with KJ Martin starting, I think it's going to be tough to gamble on Ty Washington. It would be similar to like the Duncan Robinson play, I think. If Josh Christopher is out, it would help a little bit. But where I think he actually would end up looking the most appealing is if you did get Nix starting in place of KJ Martin, because that would signal that Nix is starting at point and Ty Washington's backing him up and getting backup point guard minutes, which would look very good at 3K.
Yeah, and that could break down to any sort of like Nix is not going to be afforded those minutes if he doesn't have to be. Like that could be 24-24
right.
when all of
and even if it's
done.
28-20, that's probably good.
Right. Okay, so we're on the same page there. Nix 3,900 point guard only on FanDuel. Probably not going to look great unless he starts. Anything else for Houston?
Zubac's got Zach Collins' compound head fracture.
Anything else for Houston?
I don't think I specifically mentioned Eric Gordon, but he's a 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute guy. Should play 28 to 30 minutes. He's 3,900. He's an afterthought on most slates. On this slate, he's pulling 20% ownership just because of what he lets you build around him.
There we go. For San Antonio, doubtful tag on.
They are going Batum Morris Zubats.
Clippers will.
Jackson, George, Batum, Morris, Zubats.
I mean, Zubats coming out, or Batum coming off of what, 37 minutes or whatever yesterday? Something like that?
38, yeah. 38.
Jesus.
Yeah, so Batum looks like a really good value now.
Yeah. What are you going to give him? 28?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
It also, though, it does and doesn't change how I feel about John Wall and Luke Kennard.
Great. Please elaborate there. That is stellar advice.
There's still a ton of volatility in their playing time, but I'm not as confident that one of Wall or Kennard is closing. Now I think it's one of Wall, Batum, or Kennard. Yeah. Like if they're willing to start the game with Batum at the 3, there's no reason that they wouldn't be willing to close the game with Batum at the 3. I didn't think that they were going to go that route.
Neither did I. Boy, this is going to be fun. No Devin Vassell for the Spurs. No Sohan, no Pirtle, no Keita Bates-Diop. Josh Richardson in, McDermott in, Romeo Langford in. Keldon Johnson's 50% owned on both sides. Trey Jones might as well be. Langford, McDermott, Collins, all Josh Richardson, all basically like 20% depending on the site. We have Zach Collins at 40 on FanDuel at 5,200 power forward center. I won't want to get to 40. I mean, Charles Bassey is 3,600 at center on DraftKings and pulling 30% ownership. Roby's at 25. What do you do here?
So I think San Antonio looks great across the board. I think there's also some really questionable guys getting a shit ton of ownership. And I don't think it's totally wrong.
So much ownership.
But like,
yeah.
Charles Bassey at 3,600. I think he's a good play. He's a 1.16 DraftKings points per minute guy this year. He was even better last year. On average, I think he plays like 16 minutes, 17 minutes. But he could play more. And if he plays more, like he's absolutely going to smash. If he does play 16, then he's probably going to be fine. But it kind of just feels like he's getting over projected because, for example, last game Zach Collins was in foul trouble and then the game also blew out, so Bassey got to 20 minutes. I just think there is still some volatility here. Like Bassey, played last game. We're not very far removed from him being active and Isaiah Roby playing backup center ahead of Bassey. Bassey was then sent to the G League, then he was recalled, and last game, he was the primary backup center. You still got like 7 minutes in the first half from Gorgie Jang. So I think that there's a path to 20 minutes for Bassey. There's a path to more if things really break right. But I think a lot of times you're getting some sort of split where it's like 28 minutes for Collins, 16 for Bassey, 4 for Jang, or 4 for Roby or something like that.
And then
4 at center, not 4 total for Roby.
Also, Alize Johnson there to complicate matters as well. Like it's just another wrench. No matter what, like I don't know what position they want to try to say that he is or whatever we're going to do here, but it is just another front court body that confuses the situation.
Right. Yeah, so like last game, Johnson only played 2 minutes and 25 seconds in the first half, but then he subbed in early in the third quarter. He subbed in actually the same time as Bassey. So Collins came out, Bassey came in, Alize Johnson came in for Trey Jones, not the same position, obviously, but that was a lineup where they were going with Branham, Bates-Diop, Johnson, Alize Johnson, and Bassey. But like if they wanted to, they could just say, all right, well, we're going to sub Alize Johnson in for Zach Collins. Like that's something we've seen him do in his career. I don't think it's the most likely path, but just like Bassey is getting ownership because there's a pretty easy route to him playing enough minutes where you have to have him. There are also paths to it being everybody on Twitter bitches about Charles Bassey night.
Absolutely. The ownership here is fascinating across the board. The easiest
thing
to say
is
ownership
than I do Isaiah Roby's.
I don't trust either of them, honestly.
Neither do I, but at least Bassey's a better point per minute guy.
It's true. Obviously, Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones are just great plays today.
Yeah, Keldon Johnson and Trey Jones look great. Jones should play 32 plus minutes. He's been about a fantasy point per minute guy for the year. He's at 1.06 without Devin Vassell on the floor. So I do think maybe he's getting. I think people might be looking at him and think he's like a little bit better than he is, but at the same time, 1.06 DraftKings points per minute, could easily play more than 32 minutes. At that price, he looks very good. Keldon Johnson
playing Houston too, by the way.
Yeah, that also. Yeah, that's an average rate. That's not he's played against Houston all season, right? Keldon Johnson sees a massive usage bump without Devin Vassell, and I've mentioned it before, and I don't know, again if it'll continue over a larger sample or not, but Johnson's also seen a rebounding boost when he plays alongside Zach Collins. So there's the potential for him to sort of win in two ways here, and I think he just ends up looking like one of the best plays on the slate. He's played 337 minutes without Devin Vassell. 1.16 DraftKings points per minute, 31.9% usage rate, 18.8% assist percentage, 267 minutes for Jones, 21.3% usage, 32.3% assist percentage. So obviously both of those guys look good. If for some reason I could only roster one, I think I would go to Keldon Johnson first, but they both just look like two of the top options on the slate.
Rules?
I'm not entirely sure if I want to set max one of Collins Bassey or not. I think I'm going to not do it.
Yeah, I think you're fine there.
Because, if Collins plays 28 minutes and Bassey plays 16, you can very easily get tournament winning scores on a 3-game slate from both of them.
Absolutely. I'm more looking at the Romeo Langford, Doug McDermott, Josh Richardson. Malachi Branham is the only guy not getting any ownership. I think that's kind of interesting in a GPP. I don't know what to make of that. He's also awful.
Who do you think starts today, by the way?
Keldon Johnson and Trey Jones, Zach Collins.
So I wanted to I had said that I felt more comfortable with Bassey than Roby. If Roby is starting at 3,300, then I'd feel good about Roby. I just don't know.
McDermott is probably starting, right?
You think? I don't know, because I know that they like bringing Richardson off the bench, so I'm not expecting Richardson to start. He certainly could, but we've seen this play out a lot of times where it's Richardson's the obvious answer, except they don't want to do that. My guess is Langford.
Okay.
And then I have no idea. Probably either Roby or McDermott.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have all of these guys basically. Roby I have a little bit lighter, but I just kind of have all of these guys at 24 minutes because shrug emoji, they're all the same dude today.
Yeah. One thing just from sort of I agree with you that their minutes are all just pretty up in the air. We have seen, for example, when Keita Bates-Diop goes from his bench role to his starting role, that he plays he averages 28 minutes. So if you get McDermott starting or you get Roby starting, I don't think it's crazy to go a little bit higher and treat them not like a full-fledged starter. You're not treating them like Keldon Johnson, but treat them a little bit differently than just a random person.
When that lineup, if it comes out at 8:00, someone is getting up to 28 minutes for me. I just don't know who it is right now. So I'm kind of just hedging my bets and getting a little bit of most of this. But somebody's got to close the game. Somebody else has to be out there. So it's not fun. This is just an interesting game for Houston and San Antonio because you can kind of play the whole damn game. And some of it looks good. There's going to be a lot of bitching after this one, though. That's for sure. Jamie Mathis hit us with the super chat on a 3-gamer, stars and scrubs, or try to balance this guy out. There's only one star priced guy today. So Nikola Jokic is 11.3. Nobody else is in a 5-digit price tier. But I talked about it a little bit yesterday with Eric. We get this question sort of a lot. It's not something that I ever look at. I don't ever know the construction of my lineups. And I know that you don't either. But there are no pay up options today, and there's a lot of value. So I assume I'm getting into that 8K, 9K range, but yeah, you kind of just have to by default too.
Yeah, sorry, I was answering something in chat.
You're good.
What did you say?
Nothing.
Do I need to respond to it?
So stars and scrubs or balance build question.
It's
the
super chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think you said it. There is a star.
Yeah. Goody said, hate the idea of capping players per lineup on a 3-game slate, but can we make an exception for the Spurs for a 20 max? I don't think so.
I'm not going to cap it at 3.
Yeah. Well, he didn't ask if you were going to cap it at 3. You just said it's a 3-game slate.
Oh, hate the idea of capping players per lineup.
You're really good at super chats.
Yeah. Hate the idea of capping players per lineup on a 3 games. Can we make an exception for the Spurs? I guess I don't understand the question. Why would we? The Spurs are the most appealing team on the slate. Why would we make an exception and only cap them?
I'm gonna have a lot of them. My filler arc said, I don't trust San Antonio and Pop. I'm just gonna play my 76er boy and go to sleep. Easton or Jabari today, last man in. Jabari.
Yeah, Jabari. I mean, he's likely to play 12 minutes more.
And then Jorge, does it sound crazy? Does it sound too crazy having some lineups with 3 to 4 from Houston plus 3 to 4 from the Spurs? No.
I don't even see this one.
Well, keep looking hard.
Oh, now it's there. Does it sound too crazy having some lineups with 3 to 4? No. I mean, you can't do 4 and 4; they won't let you. But other than that,
yeah, you'll get to 7.
Yeah.
BetMGM is the sponsor
I guess you can
of
on FanDuel. You have 9 spots.
This shoe. Yeah, you can. You can go 4-4-1.
Yeah.
If you are in a legal sports betting state and you have not signed up yet at BetMGM, there's a link in the description of this video. Click it, head on over, make a qualified deposit. It's got to be at least $10. My recommendation, go the full Megillah, put in $1,000 because you get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. If it wins, you just move on with your life with all of that money in your account. If it loses, they will make that bet whole again with some free bets. So risk-free up to $1,000. Take advantage there. But also, since you're watching this show, I assume you're interested. 2 free months of Stokastic plus Platinum. You're not going to find a better deal elsewhere, folks. You're getting in there on the sports betting side, and you're getting hooked up for 2 months with Stokastic plus Platinum. Can't beat it. You really, really can't beat it. And you get to look at that handsome man in the graphic, too. So I hope we keep this one around for a little bit. Also, hit that like button, folks. 282 likes. I think we can get up to like 350 pretty quickly. So please do so.
To just answer Pete's question so I don't have to type multiple sentences. Prize Picks is going, as far as I know, the opposite direction in Maryland. Prize Picks was legal, but as part of them, the regulations and stuff for actual sports betting going live, they got booted.
You ready to close this one out with the, I guess, easiest game to talk about?
So somebody had asked about Malachi Branham. He is another...
That was me.
What?
Me. I mentioned Malachi Branham.
Oh, well, somebody in chat asked too that said that he hadn't been mentioned. Yeah, he's just another piece. He's the same as Romeo Langford. If Branham starts, he gets more minutes than Langford. If Langford starts, he gets more minutes than Branham. But yeah, he's like a 0.6 fantasy point per minute guy. On most slates, he wouldn't care. On this one, he is reasonable.
I think he's interesting just because every single person is 20% owned or higher, and we have Malachi Branham at 7.5.
Yeah, I don't think you should have a 3-to-1 gap between Romeo Langford and Malachi Branham specifically.
I agree. The Denver Nuggets are 1-point favorites in Portland, 226 total. Denver a little confusing, but we'll get to it. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is in. No Michael Porter Jr. Jokic is a very good play on every single slate, 30% owned on both sites. Don't have a ton to talk about for Jokic. I don't really think that we have too much to say about like Bruce Brown or Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, KCP. Like we know what this starting lineup looks like at this point. We got to talk about the elephant in the room here. How are you projecting Bones Highland off of his 30 minutes now that he and Coach Michael Malone had a bit of a powwow and it went positively for Bones?
I'm pretty comfortable going mid-20s on Bones, which is going to make him look good.
Yeah, same.
It just, I'm not going to, I really try hard not to buy into coach speak, but when the coach actually does what he suggested he was going to do, and then it also goes well, seemingly, I mean, they still lost the game, but, Bones, at least from a fantasy standpoint, played really well. I don't know how happy Malone was, but I assume, he played 30 minutes. He scored 20 actual points. I assume Malone was happy. So you had Malone say basically, look, we need this guy to anchor our second unit. Then he goes out there and plays 30 minutes. He also didn't even close the game. So could have played more minutes. I'm pretty comfortable going, mid-20s on him. I think there's upside for him to play more. He's obviously a really, really good fantasy producer. I like him quite a bit, especially only pulling 14% ownership at 5,600. That's really interesting to me. I almost think he's like a safer version of John Wall.
I had that conversation in Discord earlier. I prefer Bones to John Wall today, given everything that we're seeing. Yeah, I got him in for 25 minutes too, by the way.
Right. I think that their minutes projections are similar. They're similar point per minute guys. I think Highland has the easier path to just playing a ton and than Wall does. So, and I also think that you're getting like 24, 25 more often from Highland than you are from Wall. Probably by a little bit. So yeah, I think they're both good plays. I think I actually prefer Highland. And then we also saw the other thing that actually kind of makes me just like really like Mike Malone right now.
This
He
one's
actually played
interesting.
Christian Brown 16 minutes. So he said
Yeah.
he'd been playing Devon Reed, he'd been playing Chanchar. He says before the game, we need to get Highland minutes, we need to get Brown minutes. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're doing the Jason Kidd thing where we just name everybody and act like we're not in control of playing them. But then he actually went out and played them. And Ish Smith was kicked out of the rotation. Reed was kicked out of the rotation. Chanchar only played 6.5 minutes. So I feel pretty good about the rotation they ran in that game. I'm expecting to see it again. So I don't think you play Christian Brown. I'm just saying like it was nice to see him actually. What?
Really? Shooting guard, small forward, flat min, 3-gamer? I'm not saying like he should be in everything.
He's
obviously
he's the Nuggets Duncan Robinson from a
that's fair. That's fair.
Like, yeah, the guy's getting 0.1% ownership. If you want to hope he plays 20 something minutes somehow, then sure. But like, I think you're probably getting 16 to 18 minutes from a guy that isn't very good on a per minute basis. But yeah, so I like the way the rotation went. The big question mark to me: who do you think the backup center is?
I mean, the industry says Zeke Naji. I think that it's probably DeAndre Jordan.
So do I.
I don't have a great feel either direction. I hope my hope is that I just don't care. Do you have DeAndre Jordan's price in front of you?
No, I don't.
Najee obviously the flat min right now because
so Najee's the flat min. He's also a 0.75 DraftKings point per minute guy. You should be projecting whoever you think the backup center is going to be for whatever 48 minus Jokic is 33 or 34 is. So like you should be giving them 14, 15 minutes. Jordan is 3K flat as well on DraftKings. The reason I think this matters is Najee's 0.75 DraftKings points per minute. Jordan is about 1. And if every site is going to project Najee to now be the backup center, that means DeAndre Jordan is not going to be owned. Najee, for what it's worth, also not projected to be owned. So like he's a reasonable play if you think it's Najee, but if you think it's Jordan, he's an even better play because he's the better point per minute guy. My reasoning for thinking it's Jordan is we have seen the random Zeke Naji backup games before. They were both against OKC. They had gone to Jordan against Dallas previously, but Dallas is a team where it's reasonable to go with Zeke Naji. You have that second unit where it's Maxi Kleber, Christian Wood spacing the floor. You don't really need DeAndre Jordan out there. He's not doing anything. So I guess my one concern would be, I know you had talked about it with Bones Highland the other day. If they don't think Highland and Jordan fit together, that's a concern. But if we're just doing matchup-based stuff against the second unit, I think Jordan comes back against a Nurkic / Eubanks frontcourt.
So I'm with you. It makes me nervous because I think the reason that they're going to ramp up Bones is that they're going to give him the opportunity to not play alongside DeAndre Jordan because the Bones DeAndre Jordan minutes have been a tire fire for Denver. And I think a lot of that has to do with Bones, but I think they're going to try to test it out with Zeke Naji. I don't have a great feel for it, but I just think it makes more sense to project DeAndre Jordan because I don't think that I'm going to get to Zeke Naji either way because he's not good enough. And I'd rather just try to put myself in a better shot in a 3-game slate. So we're on the same page here.
Yeah. And it's just like, I'm not going crazy. I'm not going to play a lot of DeAndre Jordan, but, I certainly wouldn't be playing him in single entry or anything, but I do think there's a pretty big advantage to be had potentially if, I guess like the dream situation is Charles Bassey plays 16 minutes at 3,600. DeAndre Jordan plays 15 minutes at 3K flat, and Jordan somehow just manages to beat Bassey. It's not going to happen that often, but it's going to happen more than 1 in 40 times or whatever Bassey's ownership is.
Hagen wants to know, Murray fouls last night the reason we got more Bones?
Who fouls?
Were Jamal Murray's fouls the reason we got more Bones?
Jamal Murray played 30 minutes, so kind of. Bones played the final 2 minutes of the first half because Bruce Brown picked up a foul and went to the bench. Then Jamal Murray left like 3.5 minutes into the third quarter. So Highland subbed in earlier than he normally would. So yeah, he did pick up extra minutes there. And that's why, like, if there wasn't anything weird that had happened, it would be like, wow, he played a normal 30 minutes and could have played more if he closed. There were additional minutes that were thrown out there because of fouls. But for one, like, it's pretty common that somebody on a team gets in foul trouble at some point. And two, like, Bones subbed in for 2 different people that got in foul trouble. So that's a good sign as well. On average, though, I think you're getting mid-20s.
Close it out with Portland. I don't think that there's a ton for
Oh, sorry.
Portland to
One other thing. When Murray got benched for his fouls in the first quarter, Bones was already in the game, so that one didn't impact him. You got Bruce Brown subbing back in at that point.
Everybody that should be in for Portland is in. No Gary Payton, no Nas Little. Both guys have been out. So we're getting like your standard Dame, Simons, Grant, Hart, Nurkic stuff. Winslow back to his standard role. The starters are all 10 to 20% owned, depending on who it is. Some of these guys have prices that are increased based on Dame having been out for a while. I don't find anything from Portland to be like ultra interesting. Nurkic is a bit of a wild card. Does he close? Does he not close? That's up in the air here from a Denver matchup. I'm kind of anti Jeremy Grant in this spot on FanDuel at 8,200. He's projected for 22% ownership. That just feels kind of healthy now that Dame is back. He hasn't been that kind of guy with Dame out there. Anything really interesting for Portland?
I mean, Grant getting the most ownership is interesting. It's not even that I totally disagree with it. Like, I still think he's going to play a lot of minutes. I think 7,400 is fine. But like you said, overall this year, he has taken a step back when Lillard's out there. That's to be expected. I do think that it's a situation where you could certainly see Grant improve alongside Dame as the year goes on. I know it's been talked about a lot on Portland broadcasts that Grant, during Dame's absence, was playing the way basically that Dame wanted him to play when he recruited him on Team USA. So It was like kind of not the issue, but coming back, it was likely that Portland really tries to figure out a way for Dame and Grant both to get theirs and not for Grant just to disappear, because that's not what they want. So I do think you see him likely improve going forward from a fantasy standpoint. So I think the ownership is fine, but it is interesting to me that he's getting the most on the team. Nurkic, I like at 7K. You know, obviously, when this team is healthy, you do run that risk of them closing small. But I agree with who had said it in chat this morning. It's less likely they close small here. You know, they also didn't do it last game when they could have. So I like getting to Nurkic. He just, becomes a little bit riskier when they're healthy. Dame in tournaments, if you can get there, great. There's not a lot to pay up for today. Obviously, a lot of your pay up allocations are going to Jokic, but if, let's say, you decide to save money at center twice, you go Bassi and Şengün, for instance, and you can't play Jokic, I love getting to Dame just because of the ceiling that he gives you, even if he is a little bit overpriced from an average standpoint. Josh Hart, not a great fantasy producer, but should play a ton of minutes. 6,100 shooting guard, small forward is going to look good. To me, Simons is the most difficult guy to get to. He still certainly can just have those games where he gets hot and goes off, but he's still certainly priced up from Dame being out, and he's a just below 1 fantasy point per minute guy when Dame plays this year.
Anything else you want to add here for Portland or for the slate in general?
We just got Bruno Fernando is out. That doesn't affect much of anything.
No.
Should just be more backup center minutes for Garuba.
I mean, I think it makes Şengün look slightly better.
Sure. Yeah, it makes Garuba look slightly better if that matters, and makes Şengün look slightly better. Obviously, the huge news that we are actually waiting on is Porter, and I haven't seen that yet.
Neither have I. You will get that news during Live Before Lock. Don't go anywhere, guys. Stay on this stream. Thank you to BetMGM for being the sponsor of NBA Live Before Lock. Coming up next, taking you all the way to 7:30. Good luck tonight, everybody.
Oh, it's that time of week again. We're inducting you fine friends into the Stokastic Hall of Fame, giving out some free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. And all you got to do to get it is download the Stokastic profile picture at stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stokastic, HOF. It's Stokastic Hall of Fame on Twitter, and win a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. $120 value when you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Or if you got a nice win, maybe it doesn't qualify and you're just looking for a shout out, maybe we can oblige. Let's get into it. Some great ones heading into this week. First up, Bob Kramatola. We'll call him Bob C here. In the 333K Mega 8, 100K to first, takes it down in the NBA. Woke up to this today. What a way to wake up. Thank you, Stokastic Hall of Fame. Yeah, fantastic way to wake up, Bob. And then Steve Buzzard also woke up to something nice. Woke up aiming for another milli. Unfortunately, came up a bit short. That's Steve's 19th six-figure win this season. Man's working hard behind the scenes. It's Stokastic every day, so you know what tools he's using. And then finally coming up here, I thought we had another waking up, but we don't. Thanks for assisting me in understanding DFS. Love it. Punched a ticket. Jay Lusty punching a ticket on FanDuel. Huge win. I told you we had some big wins this week. And then taking a trip to the Odd Shopper streets over in our premium Discord. Hiro Sandoza. How about this one? This is out of control. I think this is like $200 into over 20,000. I haven't done the math, but it sure looks that way. Saying you can use this for Odd Shopper Hall of Fame, and we will. Congrats, man. Massive win. And Ed Monk, 777. I'm in shock. 2 lineups in the $4. Handmade. No way I thought I'd take second for 7,500. First day using $5 1-week trial. Yeah, we just had that $5 1-week trial. Seems to be working out for you, Ed. Watching you guys for over 5 years, never gave up. You're the best in the industry. Thanks, man, and congratulations. And then how about Jason Pass? I won the Cincy versus Tennessee quarter arcade on Sunday. It's not much, but 300x. And remember, guys, it doesn't matter if you're entering with a quarter, a dime, whatever, a nickel, a dollar. As long as it's top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more and you're not chopping more than 3 ways, you're getting the free month. You're getting up here on the board, just like Jason said. This allows me to level up. So my next contest, my next wins will be even bigger. Thanks for all the great advice. And how about Michael Clement? Clem 822. Thank you guys. Best tools, all caps, in the industry. Special thanks to Neil Orfield and Draftaholics for the Thursday night live before lock. Bam. First place, chopping with himself. Talking what, $9,500 there. Huge win on Thursday Night Football. And to wrap this one up, it's Nick Lepre, Notorious Fantasy himself, in the Pat Mayo Experience Listener League. $5,000. Man, what a way to close out week 13. Remember, stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Stokastic Hall of Fame. Use the avatar wherever it is you play. And when you win, get that free month. We'll induct you right here. Welcome to all of you, and welcome back to those of you who have been here before. We'll see you next week for another round.
Going on, everybody? Welcome to another Stokastic NBA Live Before Lock show. If you did not like and subscribe to the YouTube channel for our last guys, Josh and Adam, do it now. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are sponsored by BetMGM today. There is no Eric. He's not here today. He was shipped off to Russia in a little bit of a hostage exchange show. In his place, Matt LaMarca joining the show. Matt, what's happening? We don't usually do these on Thursdays together.
Yeah, a little change up. Happy to help out Eric in any way that I can. I hope he travels safe, and I hope that he establishes himself well over there, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest, he's kind of built for prison. Like, there's a lot of his interests are there. So I think he'll do well in, I mean, he's not built for torture, but he's built for prison in general. I think it'll go okay for him. But he'll make
a lot of friends. I'll give him that.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're the type of friends he wants, but he'll make them.
Yeah, he'll make some friends in there for sure. And he also kind of picked a shitty day to get traded in a hostage exchange because there's only 3 NBA games today. There's not too much value on the slate. We did get some news that just happened. In the grand scheme of things, it's fairly insignificant, or at least it would be on most slates. Bruno Fernando is just ruled out. Does this do anything to Şengün for you or Usman Garuba or anybody else on Houston?
It's definitely a slight bump. I mean, when we're talking a 3-game slate, everything matters, I think. So Şengün was already somebody that I had interest in today at 5,800. The minutes were there for him in their last game. So I think it definitely is a help for him. It makes Jabari Smith and Tari Eason a little bit more appealing, I think. And, I don't really play Usman Garuba. He's just not very good on a per minute basis. He's not terrible, but for me, the rest of those guys are just a little bit more exciting at their current prices. So I do think it's a bump, but it's certainly not slate breaking.
Yeah, so I think if you guys are looking for a deep tournament play, if you guys are playing, max entering $15 something on DK, I wouldn't play Garuba on FanDuel, but at the flat min on DK, I think you could make a case for him if you're looking to get really contrarian. And I think it helps Şengün out a little bit. I think that we could see Şengün play a couple of extra minutes in the absence of Bruno Fernando. I already liked getting a Şengün, and I like getting to him a little bit more now. So I do think it makes some semblance of sense to get to him before, and even more so now. Şengün definitely a core play for me. And I see people in the chat saying, why the hate on Eric? First of all, it's not hate. It's just the truth, right? I'm only presenting you the facts as they've happened. He's not going to be on the program for a little bit, but it's okay. He's going to be back. We got a super chat right off the bat here from our guy, Michael McKinney. By the way, if anybody has questions in our Discord channel, at me, and I'll be answering those 3-game slate. We should be able to get to everybody's questions today. Michael McKinney wants to know his normal FanDuel cash question. Who are the 5 must plays? Okay, so let's go and look at FanDuel. I've got lineups built for both sites today. And who are the players that I got to the most on FanDuel that I also think make the most sense for a cash game? So starting at the top, I think that, or at least in terms of the most popular players, Trey Jones, I think absolutely has to be in FanDuel cash lineups today. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, so there's going to be one. We're going to start with Trey Jones. There's one. As a pay-up option today, I'm going to say Nikola Jokic. I don't think he's overly difficult to get to today, particularly not on FanDuel. There aren't really other pay-up options on the board. Jokic, to me, number one pay-up option. I believe he should be in cash games as well. Are we on board so far?
I'm going to say yes. I think that you just need the raw points, but I will say that I have Şengün as the best per dollar play on FanDuel, and I have Bassi just slightly behind. And obviously on FanDuel, we can only play one of those 3 guys. So if you can make a good strong lineup without Jokic, I don't think you necessarily need him. The problem is that if you're not paying up for Jokic, what are you going to do? Right. And it's just so I lean towards paying up and sacrificing some of the value. But, if you feel differently, like if you really like Jimmy Butler or Damian Lillard or something like that, I would not be ultra upset if you wanted to pivot to somebody else at center.
So the other guys I'm going to fill in, Keldon Johnson, I think should be in cash games today. Jalen Green for a couple of reasons. Number one, on FanDuel, I think he's already a little bit too cheap, but we also run into the possibility that there might not be, we might not see Kevin Porter Jr. out there. He's listed as questionable. I really don't know if he's going to play or not. This does seem like a potential egregious tank situation. Houston Rockets against the San Antonio Spurs, 2 of the worst records in the NBA. I would not be shocked at all if Kevin Porter Jr. sits. With that in mind, I think Jalen Green should be in cash lineups. Who are a couple other guys that you would fill that out with for Michael?
Bones Highland for me, I think is cash viable on FanDuel. He's more of a tournament guy on DraftKings, but he's just 5K. I think his minutes are pretty solidified in the mid-20s at this point. And we know what kind of per minute producer he is. So I think at 5K, he's cash viable in my eyes. We hit on Trey Jones and Keldon Johnson for the Spurs. I think Doug McDermott is also somebody you could use in a cash game. He's 3,600 on FanDuel, so basically priced at the minimum. And I will throw in that I still think Bruce Brown is just way too cheap at 5,600. All the guy has done is return value recently. So I would add those guys into the mix, but I think overall you did a pretty good job.
Yeah, Bruce Brown, I totally agree, especially because what's the deal with Michael Porter Jr.? When is he coming back? Because every day he gets ruled out for today's game, he already gets ruled out for the Nuggets next game. It just seems like they rule him a couple days in advance. It's like he signed that max contract and his body was like, cool, we've done our job. We never have to play basketball.
This is why he slipped in the draft, yeah, right? This is why he was not a super high draft pick, was because of injuries. And, now the Nuggets are kind of paying the piper.
Yeah, and it's funny because on one hand, it ended up being a really good draft pick for him because he provided a lot of healthy relative to his draft slot. And then it was just as soon as he signed that max contract, all of the red flags that made teams say he was undraftable. There were some teams that wouldn't even put a first round grade on him, according to reports, because they thought his back was so fucked up. There were doctors who were looking at him and say, he's never going to play in the NBA. The Nuggets took a shot on him. It worked out for a couple of years, and he was clearly a very talented offensive player and still could be going forward, but he's just really struggled to stay healthy. But the point here that we're making is Bruce Brown continues to benefit from his absence, and FanDuel hasn't really priced him up. He's been $5,600 now for how long on FanDuel, Bruce Brown? He's been $5,600
basically
for
4 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while now, and he's been performing fairly well in that starting spot. So on a smaller slate, a little bit underpriced, I certainly do think that makes sense. So, Michael, hope that answers your question. The next super chat we have here is from Scotty Olison. No actual question, just a super chat. Says, Greg, thanks for being a real one and answering my questions about FanDuel yesterday. No problem. Anytime. And if anybody has any questions, you always hit me up. Or if anybody has strategy questions, I'm very available on Twitter. I'm very codependent. If you ask me a question, I have to answer it. My self-value is tied up in being able to help other people. So
I've always said the two things I think about Osmo hosts. One, Eric Lindquist made for prison.
Yes.
Two, Greg just extremely helpful on Twitter.
Yeah. Helpful to some and just very unhelpful to others. It depends on individual's perspective, how they come at me. Miami High Life in our Discord channel is asking, is it worth it to pay up for Jokic today on DK? Yes, he is my favorite pay up option, especially because there just aren't other guys on the high end to really get to today. And there's a good amount of value on DraftKings as well. You mentioned Charles Bassey makes some sense. We've got some other Spurs guys that I think make sense too. Kevin Porter Jr. could be out for the Rockets. So I think that there's a good amount of value on DraftKings. Jokic ends up in about half my lineups. This isn't one of these slates where I find the really expensive guys all that difficult to pay up for. The reason being, Jokic today, 11-3 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we have Jokic priced at, what was that FanDuel salary? It is 11.5. Compare this to some of the other slates where I said, I'm kind of iffy on paying up for Giannis, iffy on paying up for Doncic. Well, a couple days ago when I was iffy on paying up for Luka on a 3-game slate, he was 13,000 on DraftKings.
Yep.
Totally different scenario when number one, there's more value on today's slate. And then number two, Jokic is quite a bit cheaper. So yeah, I'm going to be paying up for him a ton. Is he your favorite pay up option today, Matt?
He is. I mean, particularly on DraftKings, because we're talking now, we can still take some of that value at center. And the salary is just not nearly as big of a concern when you consider that literally every other team on the slate, well, maybe besides the Blazers, is giving us some sort of injury value. So, there's tons of value with the Spurs. I think there are some underpriced guys with most of the rest of the teams as well. Like, you can play Jokic with Keldon Johnson, with, Jimmy Butler, and it's really not an issue on this slate. So yeah, it's really hard for me not to gravitate towards him. His ceiling projection I have at roughly 15 points higher than the rest of the field.
Which totally makes sense because the other guys that we have on the high end, you've got Damian Lillard, who, in terms of his production this year, a couple of reasons is taking a step back. Number one, remember when Damian Lillard never got hurt? That's not the case anymore. He gets hurt fairly frequently now. And then also, Anthony Simons has been so good this year that Lillard's usage just hasn't probably been quite as high as a lot of us would have expected coming into the year. You look at some of the games for Dame this year, he's had over the last month and a half, one game with 50 plus fantasy points. I know he's missed a lot of time, but even when he's been out there, sometimes the minutes have been limited. Sometimes the production hasn't been there. You've got Paul George playing on the tail end of a back-to-back. Jimmy Butler, who would lose to me in a fight, he's always hurt. He's coming back from injury as well, a little bit cheaper. So if you're paying up for anybody, I think Jokic is pretty clearly the premier option, and he's not all that difficult to get to. The next question we have is from Jets World. He wants to know, will you please rank Batum, McDermott if starting, Roby if starting, and Bassey for a high DK GPP? So I think there's a couple of ways that we should go about this. First of all, Nick Batum is somebody who I am not getting to. So I could just kind of say from that standpoint, I don't love him. Are you getting to Nick Batum at all?
I have probably like 5 to 10% of him. Okay. He did play like 38 minutes in their last game. And I do think the Clippers have a little bit more value tonight than maybe the field is giving them credit for. But yeah, he would clearly be last for me out of those 4 options.
Yeah, so for me, none on Batum, but I want to now look at some of the Spurs, just value players in general. I think this should help Jets roll, but also help the people watching, because the team I get the most exposure to today, it's the San Antonio Spurs. I just find this to be totally unavoidable. They're cheap. The matchup could not be better going up against the Houston Rockets. This game as a whole is just one that I'm going to be stacking a whole bunch, and not necessarily because I'm going out of my way to stack it, just because these are the best points per dollar plays on the slate by such a wide margin that when I run lineups, I get to a whole bunch of them. So let's try to prioritize for the audience who the Spurs players are that we're going to be getting the most exposure to. And just to read off the injury report, Jeremy Sokan, he's out for them. Jakob Poeltl, he remains out. Devin Vassell out. And we also have Keita Bates-Diop out. So it's even like the guys who typically come in and play a role for the guys who are out. Like the other games we've seen Vassell out, it's been Keita Bates-Diop who's taken on that bigger role and has provided us good value. He's out as well. So that's where we get some of these peripheral players that really start to project well. So of these guys, Matt, who are you prioritizing the highest from the Spurs?
For me, it's Bassey. I think he provides the best combination of value and leverage. Right. He is projected for ownership right now, right? We have him at 31.5% on DraftKings, but he's still giving us a leverage score of almost 16%. So I think the field is kind of sleeping on him a little bit. I have him as the best per dollar play on this slate. He's just so good on a per minute basis. I think he gets to, 20 minutes in this game. And if it gets ugly, which Spurs games have a tendency to do, it could be even more than that. So for me, Bassey is a pretty clear number 1.
So, it's funny. I have him projected better than Isaiah Roby, but I get to slightly more Isaiah Roby exposure on DraftKings. The reason why is because of the position. Which is the only reason why. I totally agree. If somebody's in a 1v1 and you're choosing between the two, I would say Bassey, but over the course of my lineups, I get to more of Roby just because you have an extra spot to play him in a power forward. To me, though, those are the 2 best value plays on the slate, Bassey and Roby. So I love them as cheap options. And then other guys, Keldon Johnson and Trey Jones make it into a ton of my lineups. They're players I'm going to be getting a bunch of. And then I have some other guys, too, that I'm just kind of mixing in, but more as dart throws over the course of my lineups. But let's talk about those pay up options I just mentioned. Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones. Do you like them in the ownership that's going to them?
Yeah, so Keldon Johnson's probably going to be the highest owned player for me when all is said and done. He is just carrying an insane workload for this team at the moment. At least 22 shot attempts in 5 straight games. The only problem is that he hasn't made like any of them. We're talking about a guy who has been a pretty good shooter throughout his career, but over the last month or so, really, he's been sub 35% from the field. Eventually, he's going to find his stroke. And I think that Houston is a perfect game for him to potentially get right. So I think Keldon Johnson is a smash for me at his current salary. I really like Trey Jones as well. The problem for me is that guard is much more plentiful with the options compared to forward. So Johnson makes it into a ton of my lineups just because I think forward is kind of gross tonight. But at guard, and Trey Jones is only point guard eligible, not point guard shooting guard, which does matter a little bit. I find myself with less exposure than maybe I would just based on raw projections, because there are some other guys at the position that I want to get in.
Yeah, and that's the case on both DraftKings and FanDuel, where Trey Jones is only a point guard. So definitely totally do understand that perspective. Are there anybody you're taking dart throws on that are lower owned on the Spurs? And by the way, just to read off some of the ownership, sorry, because I wanted to make one more point before I go on, because I was asking you about some of the ownership and some of the lower owned guys you might like getting to. Keldon Johnson right now project for 46% ownership on DK. So is Trey Jones. And then we've got Isaiah Roby and Charles Bassey, both of them right at 33 and 34%. Zach Collins at 27%. But then once you get below them, nobody is really massively popular. It's a 3-game slate, so it's not like you're going to find, 2% owned plays that we love. But the other guys, by and large part, not all that popular. And then reading off the FanDuel ownership, we've got Trey Jones projected for 57%, Keldon Johnson at 53%. Then we've got Zach Collins at 45% projected ownership right now. So I want to know, outside of the players that we've already talked about, who are the dart throws that you like who are lower owned from the Spurs?
I think Zach Collins is a good dart throw. He's more expensive than Bassey, but I think he plays a little bit more, and he's a similar, per minute producer over the course of the year. So he's an interesting pivot. If you're not playing Bassey, or, you're looking to differentiate some of your lineups. Malachi Branham is fine. He's checking in with virtually no ownership. He is a really bad per minute player, but maybe he sees mid 20s at 3,200 in a plus spot. Like, I think that he should be catching a little bit more ownership than he is at the moment. I think, again, for me, like McDermott, Langford, Josh Richardson, those guys are going to be popular, but they all stand out as solid values. The more under the radar ones would be Zach Collins and Malachi Branham.
Yeah. So for me, I know we got asked about Doug McDermott. I took a couple shots on him. The other one for me is the one that I get the most exposure to that isn't one of the most popular. It's Romeo Langford. And Langford sucks, which is that's always a rub, right? If you're playing somebody, like, I don't think he's good. But at the same time, too, I think he should get extended minutes in this spot. He's very, very cheap. And there aren't other guys that are this cheap that we like rostering at the shooting guard, small forward position. So Langford, $3,100 on DraftKings, and then over on FanDuel, 4,000 with shooting guard eligibility, actually is sub 10% owned on FanDuel. So to me, this is the dart throw play that I do like going to for cheaper, particularly on DraftKings, 3,100 shooting guard and small forward eligibility. If he's going to get minutes in this spot where it's just going to be a really high paced game, it's just going to be easy to fall into stats. And at that kind of price point, I think it does make sense. So that's the punt guy that I do like getting to. And by the way, we just got news. Josh Richardson is officially available to play. It was expected he was probable, but now it is official. Same with Romeo Langford, who is also probable on the injury report. Now, I'm going to ask you about the other part of this game in a second, but first, Lucky asked us a question. Does it make sense to game stack the Houston Spurs game 3-3, 3-4, something along those lines? Yes, and I'm not even doing it intentionally. It just happens when I'm building out my lineups. Are you setting any kind of restrictions to limit the amount of exposure you get to this game, or is it just all systems go?
No, I think loading up on this game is fine. The one thing I will say is that loading up on this game is going to be very popular.
Yeah.
And so I think that sprinkling in some other players might actually increase your chances of having a unique lineup tonight. But clearly it's the best fantasy game on the slate, right? You've got two teams that play fast. They play no defense. One of them is really banged up. It's a clear smash game.
So then let's talk about the other side of the game and Kevin Porter Jr. That's going to be a really significant injury. It's going to shape a lot of lineups, and I think it's going to be pretty easy to make pivots off of. But first, I do also want to mention that while we're not sure of the status of Kevin Porter Jr., we do know that we have a great offer right now from BetMGM, who is sponsoring today's show, because a couple of things are going to happen if you guys sign up at BetMGM using our link. For starters, you're going to get a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. But in addition, you're also going to get 2 free months of a Stokastic Plus Platinum package. So that is going to come with our player projections, ownership projections, and our tools that you're going to use to win money on DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever it is you guys play DFS. And let's say you were in this situation where you weren't sure if Kevin Porter Jr. was going to play. Well, here's the good news. As soon as he gets rolled out, our projections are updated very, very quickly, and we'll know once the lineup comes out who the best value plays are. But right now, Matt and I are going to speculate on this a little bit. If Kevin Porter Jr. doesn't play, who would benefit from Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I think the clear answer is Jalen Green. I think he becomes, the clear top scoring threat for the team. I think Eric Gordon would also become very interesting. Gordon randomly has those games where he plays huge minutes. He's also dirt cheap. He's 3,900 on DraftKings. He hasn't been the same per minute guy that we have seen from him in years past, but it would be hard to pass him up at that price tag if KPJ ultimately sits. You could probably get some usage bumps for a guy like Şengün and maybe Jabari Smith as well. But the thing with the Rockets is that most of their more appealing plays for me, at least from a value perspective, are in the front court. So the KPJ injury, is it going to mean that I'm starting to play guys like like Garrison Matthews or Dacian Nix? Like the answer is no. It wouldn't change that.
So I totally agree. The number one guy would be Jalen Green. I already think he's one of the top plays, particularly on FanDuel. I like him on DraftKings, but FanDuel even more so. I think he's a really, really strong FanDuel play. Yeah. And he would just be impossible to avoid if Kevin Porter Jr. isn't out there. Jalen Green already doesn't turn down shots. I can't even imagine what you'd expect his usage to be without Kevin Porter Jr. Like what we set the over under at 36 or something like that, some astronomically high number. He would shoot a ton, but also he's doing a little more with the peripheral stats now. He's become a little bit better of a playmaker as the season's gone on. The assists have been there. So Jalen Green would be in a terrific spot if Kevin Porter Jr. doesn't play. I agree with you. Dacian Nix, not somebody I would be playing. Eric Gordon, though, I know people are going to hate this because it's Eric Gordon, but it's hard to think that he wouldn't pick up more minutes and some of the usage left behind by Kevin Porter Jr. He's the value play that would stand out to me if Porter doesn't play. Is that sensible to you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think at 3,900, he becomes better than a lot of the Spurs value guys that we just talked about, right? I mean, Eric Gordon, when he plays big minutes, he has shown us a ceiling, right? He played 36 minutes against the Pacers a few weeks ago, and he got to over 40 fantasy points. He had 26 fantasy points in 40 minutes in their last game. So, like, I think when you factor in the ceiling, for sure, like, I like him more than I like the Spurs value guys in the same price range, with the exception of maybe Bassey.
Yeah, and also obviously with the caveat that this would be in this scenario where we were not
Correct.
to see Kevin Porter Jr. out there. But I've got data to back this up too, Matt. I didn't come empty-handed. I'm not firing from the hip here. Kevin Porter Jr. with him off the court this year. Eric Gordon, 27.5% usage rate, scores 38 DraftKings points per 36 minutes. Those are really, really good numbers to look at for Eric Gordon. Averaging over a fantasy point per minute. For FanDuel also, over a fantasy point per minute. 36.1 fantasy points per 36 minutes when he plays without Kevin Porter Jr. on the court. And like I said, the 27.5% usage rate. It should come as no surprise that Jalen Green leads the team in usage when Porter isn't on the court. But Eric Gordon is second, followed by Şengün and then Jabari Smith. So I do think that it would be wise to give Eric Gordon a pretty big bump if we were to see no Kevin Porter Jr. on the court. Here's what's nice about this game as well. Usually when Eric's not being held up in prison, which happens a few times a month, but when he is here, we usually talk about what we would do in case certain injuries arise, how we're going to prepare for a late swap. This slate is really easy because I'm already getting a lot of exposure to this game and I'm not playing a whole bunch of the first game. It's not going to be hard to rearrange my lineups and take Kevin Porter Jr. out in the event that he does not play. So I think this is a pretty easy late swap scenario that we don't really have to do too much planning for ahead of time.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. In that first game, you're right. There's not a ton of exposure that I have. I have a few guys on the Clippers, the Heat, like I have a little bit of Jimmy Butler, but yeah, for the most part, it's very slim pickings in that first game. So you do have time to sort of react and adjust.
Yeah, and one other part of the game I think we should talk about in a second is what happens if Kevin Porter Jr. plays. But first, we did kind of address it, but Steven Leibowitz in Discord chat asked, how do you feel about fading the first game totally to have max flexibility for the two other games for single entry? I have no issues with that. I don't think there's anybody from the first two games that is a must play.
Yeah, nobody's a must play. I really like John Wall at 5,900 on DraftKings.
What
he is averaging?
Fuck is it? Oh, sorry, but what is this starting lineup that the Heat just came out with? What is going on here? Why is Drew Smith starting at point guard for this team? There was days where the Heat had. I'm sorry I cut you off, but every once in a while something catches your eye. And it's like what's going on here? There was games.
Oh, cool, Drew.
There was games where the Heat had like 7 players active and Drew Smith wasn't cracking the rotation. Now he's starting, and I know that Kyle Lowry's out, but Drew Smith. Sorry. So you said John Wall's the player like the most in the first game for tournament purposes.
Yeah, I really like John Wall. He's at 1.35 DraftKings points per minute with Kawhi and Norm Powell off the floor this season. And that's a pretty big sample size too. It's over 184 minutes. So I think Wall probably stays, in the mid 20s minutes wise, but he has the potential to just be super effective on a per minute basis. And the Heat are a suboptimal matchup. This game looks really gross when you dive into the Vegas data, right? 212.5 total. The Heat are 7-point favorites. That gives the Clippers an implied team total of like basically 100 points. But I think John Wall has a ceiling for 40 plus tonight. I think he can reach it pretty easily, to be honest. So I think him at 5,900, that's the one play from the early games that is going to be in, not an overwhelming chunk of my lineups, but I bet you I'm more overweight on John Wall than probably any other player today.
So here's something I think we should do. Jordan, could you find a picture of Drew Smith and put him on the screen? Because I'm sure most of the audience is wondering who he is. And I think it'd be helpful if they actually knew who this guy is. And one thing that really bugs me about him is he spells his name wrong. Drew spelled D-R-U. What is going on there? Also, he does not look like a Drew Smith. I don't know what he looks like, but it's not a Drew Smith.
It's not what I was expecting, because I'll tell you what, I did not know what Drew Smith looked like.
Now, in fairness, looking at the images of him, he does kind of look built like Kyle Lowry.
A lot of ass.
Yeah, it looks like he's built like a power forward. Not what I was expecting from Drew Smith. Now, what are we going to do with Drew Smith starting? Are you going to play him at all? Because I'm trying to pull up some stats on him. There was never, when I'm thinking about this slate, there was never a part of me that goes, who might be starting today? Drew Smith. Never once crossed my mind. So I'm pulling up some numbers on him, which don't exist. He has played 11 minutes in 11 minutes per game. That's in 4 games, 8.5 fantasy points. So times we've seen him out there, 3 minutes, 1 fantasy point, 21 minutes, 14, 16, 12, 5 minutes, 5 fantasy points. What are we making of this guy?
Yeah, that game with 20, where he played 21 minutes, was that the game where they had 7 players?
Let's see. The game he played.
I gotta pull up that game log.
Yeah, I've got it up. I've got it up now. It wasn't that game. This was just kind of a random game. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, they had 9 players active that day. I don't know why. I honestly don't know why he played 20 minutes that day. They had some guys out because the Heat always have some guys out, but it wasn't the day they were horribly shorthanded.
Right. It looks like there was no Jimmy Butler, but Lowry played, Hero played, Bam played. Weird. I'm going to get him in there. I think that anytime you're talking a min-priced point guard, you should have some exposure, especially when like nothing is going to happen that makes Drew Smith the chalk all of a sudden, right? No. Like Drew Smith is going to be a contrarian min-priced starting point guard on a 3-game slate. I think when you look at it that way, like that's a player to be overweight on, so I'm not going crazy, but maybe some of the lineups where I had Romeo Langford in a guard spot, maybe I'll pivot some of those to Drew Smith now.
I'm going to be keeping an eye on our projections and ownership projections here because I really don't know what to make of this. My first thought is I don't really want to get any kind of significant exposure to him. If he pops up in a couple lineups here and there, cool. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to prioritize this guy because it's hard for me to think that he's going to play a massive amount of minutes because they do have so many guys active still today. Unless because don't forget also Oladipo's back now. They have Oladipo, They have Strus, they have Duncan Robinson. I guess Duncan Robinson doesn't have to play minutes, but it's just weird that this guy would hardly be playing and the Heat finally get a bunch of guys back. It's like, all right, Drew Smith time. It just doesn't really make sense to me. It's hard for me to think that he's reliably going to play more than 20 minutes.
No, I think I'm going to update his projection to about 20 minutes. But again, min-priced, 20 minutes. From the limited bit we've seen of him, 0.74 DraftKings points per minute. I think it's enough to be viable at 3K. I'm with you. It's like, it's not a smash. Don't go and rework all your lineups just to jam in some Drew Smith. But I do think that when you factor in the ownership, compared to some of the low priced Spurs guys, like he's an appealing pivot.
Got a super chat from Gabriel Meffern. He wants to know, is Wall better knowing that so he wants to know with Drew Smith starting, is John Wall now a better or worse play? It makes no difference when it comes to John Wall for me. I don't know that him starting as opposed to say them going with, Hero as the starting point guard and Strus as the shooting guard or something like that. Like, I don't think that has any real significant impact on John Wall. Does it really change how you're viewing Wall today?
Nope. No. Again, I view all matchups against the Heat as suboptimal. It doesn't matter who your individual matchup on the Heat is. It's more just it's an efficiency type of play for John Wall. So the matchup is kind of irrelevant.
The other thing that I should mention when it comes to this game, the total is 212.5. Here are the total for all three games on the slate. Heat Clippers 212.5, Spurs Rockets 230, Blazers Nuggets 226.5. We're looking at a game that is 14 points lower on the spread compared to the other games on the slate. It's just hard for me to think that the upside is really comparable in this game compared to the other spots. So, but either way, John Wall, if you're looking to play him in large field tournaments, cool. But it shouldn't have any impact on. It shouldn't be impacted at all by Drew Smith.
So here's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the odds are that the winning lineup in tonight's big GPP has 0 players from the first game?
Oh, the odds. That's kind of hard. I mean, I could just look at the boom bust tool and kind of add it up and then do it that way. Well, let me actually go to Jordan. Can you pull up the boom bust tool? I'm kind of curious to see just which players have the highest optimal odds, and then we kind of answer Matt's question from that sense. And also, while you're pulling it up, Gabriel Meffrin wants to know Wall or Bruce Brown at shooting guard on FanDuel. I prefer Bruce Brown.
I think Wall's got more upside. So I'll say John Wall.
Okay. The boom bust tool, which by the way was just recently updated. So it's going to take a second for some of the optimal and the ownership percentages to come in. But yeah, because it just got updated 39 seconds ago. But that also means we're going to have ownership updates coming in soon, projection updates, which is good because I want to see what our tools think of the one and only Drew, spelled DRU. Our projection on him. Let's see. Our projection on Drew Smith. We have Drew Smith for 12 fantasy points right now. And it was just updated. Let me check to make sure that's the most recent one. Drew Smith, we have for 12 fantasy points. It's going to be hard for me to get to him. I was going to double check with our projection just to see where we have him. We have him for 19 minutes, and in those 19 minutes, we have him as barely a guy who's scoring more than half a fantasy point. With some of this data in mind from the site, I'm going to leave Drew Smith out of my player pool. What do you make of him now being projected for 12 fantasy points?
I'll still have 5-10% of him, just to be safe. It's a 3-game slate. It's not that hard to sprinkle in some players. But yeah, the fact that we already have a good bit of value and there's not a ton of studs to pay up for does make him less appealing than he would be on like some other nights potentially.
Yeah, by the way, we also have word here that Kevin Porter Jr., Josh Christopher, game time decisions. Not that that's all that surprising. We weren't expecting to get any of that news prior to the Clippers Miami game starts. But once again, if we're loading up on Spurs Houston, it's going to be fairly easily to make swaps once we get that news. And if you guys do want access to all the tools we have on the site, 3 days for free. If you haven't checked it out yet, no risk to you at all. Every single person here could afford free, with the one exception being Eric Lindquist. He's negative $5 on his bank account. He can't afford zero. Zero's too expensive for him. Everybody else, you could afford free. So click on the link below if you want to check out all the tools. You get in for 3 days free there. Gabriel Meffrin has one more follow-up question. He wants to know Branham or Drew at the flat min for the last man in. If it has to be one of those guys, Drew, but honestly, neither.
I'm okay with Drew. I'm tired of the Drew slander from Greg. All right, guys making fun of his name, how he looks. I think he's just a hater.
Once again, I was only speaking the truth. Also, this is a FanDuel question, so maybe could I sway you in my favor the fact that he's going to be paying $3,500 for Drew Smith as opposed to $3,000?
I mean, it's the minimum either way.
Yeah, except there's a difference when the minimum is $500 more expensive.
Yeah, but you have $10,000 more salary.
Yeah, it's also just easier to pay up for other guys on FanDuel. Like for instance, so you've got him at $3,500. We got other guys like Doug McDermott's $3,600 on FanDuel today. There's just other guys that I think are better comparable for cheap prices.
Yeah, it's fine.
Some of the other questions we have coming in the Discord channel. This one from TKO730, Bassie and Jeremy Grant, or Hero and Roby for DK cash. If this is a cash question, Hero and Roby. Although I think you should be playing Bassie in cash. You should be playing Bassie and Roby in cash.
So the question was Bassie and Hero, or
it was Bassie and Grant, or Hero and Roby. To me, I said Hero and Roby just because I prefer Hero to Jeremy Grant. But
correct.
I do think you should be playing Roby and Bassie in cash.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Tedious wants to know, would we play Roby and Collins in the same lineup? On a 3-game slate, it's hard to be too restrictive. It's different when you're playing, a 12, 11, 10-game slate where there's a lot of options. There's only so many players to choose from today. I'm not setting any kind of specific rules to limit the amount of Spurs guys in the front court that I'm getting together. Like if I have Roby and Bassie in the same lineup, in the grand scheme of things, is it negatively correlated? Yeah, to an extent, but it's not enough for me to not want to play these guys together. But Roby and Collins, any issue with them being in the same lineup?
No, I mean, I wouldn't play Bassie and Roby and Collins together, but I think 2 of the 3 is fine.
And then I'm pretty sure we had other questions in here. Oh, here we go. Madub T wants to know Branham, Knicks, or a 3,200 or less guard on DraftKings. All right, so if we were building a lineup on DraftKings and had to play a guard for $3,200 or less, who would that be? For me, that is Romeo Langford.
I have Langford projected the best of the bunch.
Yeah, Langford. I feel pretty good about that. And then I think there was... oh, here we go. Yeah, Kareem wants to know who's the best $4,400 play for the utility spot on DK. So he's filling out his final spot in the lineup. He's got $4,400 left to spend. Who should he go to for $4,400 or less?
For me, it's I think Josh Richardson is probably the answer if just from a projections perspective in my eyes. But I also really like Tari Eason at 4,300. I think that there's a chance he's overlooked tonight. The guy he's got a very fantasy friendly skill set. He averages 1.09 DraftKings points per minute. There is some playing time available in the front court with Bruno Fernando out. Like, I think Tari Eason, he probably isn't as safe as Richardson, but he might have a bit of a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense, particularly in one lineup. He didn't say if it was a cash game lineup or anything. I do have Richardson projected better, but not by a wide margin. It's by like half a fantasy point. So my answer is going to be Richardson because I have him projected the best. But if Richardson is already in your lineup, or if you're looking for somebody who's a little bit lesser owned, because Richardson is about double the ownership of Eason, I don't really have any kind of issue with what you said there, Matt. Steven Leibowitz left us this was a Jordan Loist. Said DK Cash, Jokic, Langford, or Şengün and Butler. For cash, I'm going to say Jokic side. And Langford.
Yeah, I'm taking the Jokic side. I think that in a tournament, you can make the argument for the other way, but the Jokic side is just, it's safer.
Yeah. And then we had a question. I know somebody asked it somewhere, wanted to know if, I think this might've been Steven Leibowitz. I can't find it in the Discord chat right now, but wanted to know if they were playing a one lineup, would we include Hero and Butler in the same lineup? I know I said before, I'm not setting any kind of restrictions, but no, if I was just hand building out one lineup, I would not have Hero and Butler in it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to allocate that much salary to that first game.
Yeah, totally agree. Especially because we still have Kevin Porter Jr. up in the air, but then also, I mean, it's just not it's the weakest game on the slate to target. So I would look elsewhere. I know somebody asked that question. Steven Leibowitz said it wasn't him. I can't find it in Discord anymore. Maybe I made it up and maybe this was something I was thinking in my head. Look who's back. Seth is here. Seth 1374 in our Discord chat Sorry, I'm late. Had to run and get some Frosties for my wife's boyfriend. Was wondering which Heat stud do you prefer more, Butler or Bam? Between the two of them, I prefer Jimmy Butler today.
Yeah, the positionality pushes me towards Butler. I ran the numbers for the Heat with Lowry off the floor. They're not nearly as good as I was hoping. Butler is at 1.28 DraftKings points per minute. Bam is at 1.16. And Hero actually falls below a fantasy point. Over a sample size of, over 100 minutes for all three players. So I was hoping that one of the three would have seen like a more significant spike, but it doesn't appear that that's going to be the case.
Yeah. And by the way, I wanted to go back and look at
Drew Smith, by the way, with Kyle Lowry off the floor, 1.0 FanDuel points per minute.
How many minutes has he played without Lowry?
32 minutes.
All right. Yeah, that's probably all the minutes he's played this year, is it not?
It's pretty much
all of them. Yeah. Hard to really know what to make of it. So, by the way, News God has followed up in the chat, and he's saying thanks for the Frosties from Seth. So good on Seth for getting some Frosties for the News God. And then in terms of other questions, I think we have them covered right now. I want to make sure that we hit on just the players that we like the most overall for the slate. So do you have lineups built out for both sites or just one of them?
I am playing on DraftKings today.
Okay. So I have lineups built out for both sites. So here's what I think we should do. One of the things that I really do try to do towards the tail end of all the shows is let's give out our most rostered players on both sites. You do it for DraftKings. I'll do it for FanDuel. Starting with point guard, Matt, who are some of your most exposed players at the position for DK?
So for point guard, I have Josh Richardson, Trey Jones, Jalen Green, John Wall, Bones Highland, and Drew Smith.
Drew Smith. You didn't have to name all of them. You could have just done
all of them, baby.
All right. Point guard for me, most rostered as far as FanDuel goes, Trey Jones, Jalen Green, and Jamal Murray. Some of those guys also are going to be popping up when we talk about shooting guard. But for you, shooting guard, Matt, who are the most rostered?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same guys I just listed.
Yeah.
Langford.
By the way, a little trick to this game, how I try to do it is when I notice guys have multi-position eligibility, I try to do like half them at one position and half at the other, because it does get tricky.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really all the same guys I just listed. So
yeah.
In retrospect, you're right. I should have split them 3 and 3.
So shooting guard, one guy that stands out on FanDuel way more so than on DraftKings is Paul George. Paul George is shooting guard and small forward eligible, but he's only $8,600 on FanDuel. He's a little tough to pay up for on DraftKings, but the 8,600 mark on FanDuel, I think, is pretty solid. So he's actually the guy on FanDuel I get to the most from the first game, just because of that price tag on Paul George and the presumed usage bump that he's going to see without Kawhi Leonard. I always have some concerns with other players on the Clippers when it comes to back-to-backs, but something that Adam and I were talking about yesterday is, for whatever reason, Paul George typically is kind of immune to those types of things. There was a game last year where he missed due to injury, came back and played 40 minutes his first game back. So Paul George is somebody who they're a little less cautious with when it comes to the minutes. So I like him more so on FanDuel, certainly, than DraftKings. Small forward for you, Matt. Who are the most exposed for you on DK?
Yeah, it's a whole lot of Keldon Johnson. I have Doug McDermott as well. And Eric Gordon is small forward only eligible on DraftKings. If Kevin Porter Jr. is ruled out, he becomes a priority play.
Small forward for me on FanDuel, Keldon Johnson as well. And then we've got Marcus Morris. He benefits from the absence of Kawhi Leonard. And then also Paul George in the mix there as well. Power forward, hit me with him, Matt. Who are the most roster power forwards?
Yeah, a little bit of Jimmy Butler, but it's primarily Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, Roby, and McDermott.
Power forward on FanDuel, Keldon also there, Marcus Morris there, Bam Adebayo and Jabari Smith being two others for me over on FD. Now, close us out the center position. Who are the guys you currently get to the most on DK?
Jokic, Bassi, Şengün, and a sprinkling of Zach Collins.
And then for me, center, Jokic, Bam Adebayo also mentioned before, and then just kind of a smattering of other guys on FanDuel. Roby and Bassey, I still think are good plays on FanDuel, but they're certainly stronger plays on DraftKings than they are on FanDuel. Just differences in terms of the pricing, but then also just the fact that there's one less spot to play them in. So Bassey, $4,700 on FanDuel when he's only center eligible. I'm not going to say that makes him unplayable. That's certainly not the case, but I would just way more prioritize getting to Nikola Jokic, Bam Adebayo, those types of guys at center on FanDuel. And then Isaiah Roby also, he's $4,600 on FanDuel. So Roby and Bassey still playable on FanDuel, but close to like must-haves in cash games on DraftKings. That is not the case over for FanDuel purposes. Let's get back to our Discord channel where Jets World wants to know, if Kevin Porter Jr. is in, would you play him and Green together on DraftKings? I would not have an issue with that, especially because I think the ownership for Kevin Porter Jr. would probably be suppressed if he's playing.
Yep, way lower than it should be. I agree with that.
Let me see what the current ownership projection is on him. It's also really hard to project for these scenarios because the biggest edge that we have in NBA DFS is late swap. People build their lineups, they have them set, and then unless a player gets ruled out who's in their lineup, they're generally not changing stuff around too much. So I do think we're going to see Kevin Porter Jr. not be all that popular today. And right now we have him projected for 16% over on DraftKings, on FanDuel projected for 17%. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in even lower than that, just because I do not think a lot of people are hand building lineups, which that is still the majority of people that play DFS. People are just hand building one lineup. They are not going to have Kevin Porter Jr. in now, and they are sure as shit not swapping to him when he gets rolled in. So Porter, I think, is a pretty decent looking contrarian play today. Same page for you?
Yeah, 100%. Unlike you, I am a Kevin Porter Jr. guy, so I don't need an excuse to play him most nights.
Hey, I've bet the over on Kevin Porter Jr.'s assists a few times this year.
Hey, there you go. And did he come through for you?
I don't remember. I know.
Just say yes. Say that he did.
Yeah. He came through. I'm more of a Jalen Green guy than Kevin Porter Jr. though. I really do like Jalen Green. He's just cool.
I mean, it'd be nice if he was a little bit more efficient. I know he's getting there. He's young, but I like, not to go on a complete tangent, but like the fact that he and like, did you happen to? I don't listen to this often, but somebody sent me the link of Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo talking about like the trade value.
I saw it come up on Twitter.
And like, they were like, we're definitely taking Anthony Edwards over Trae Young.
Yeah, no.
And to me, that is just absurdity. Like, I understand Trae doesn't play defense, but like Anthony Edwards, why is this guy just such a hands down, can't miss superstar all of a sudden? And I feel kind of similarly about Jalen Green.
So Jalen Green, I don't know that he's a can't miss superstar. I generally enjoy him. I think he's a really fun player. He is a little ambitious with some of his dunk attempts, which I think really does kill his efficiency, because I've never seen a guy pass up more open dunks and layups in games to try to do something spectacular. It's like, oh, cool, I'm on a fast break. What if I try to dunk from the free throw line? And it almost never works out for him. It's always hilarious. But if you do look at his splits from last year, he got significantly better in the second half of the year. He really, really struggled the first half of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of the same this year. So we saw him October shoot 36% from the field, 34% from three. Still struggled a little bit from three in November, but he did shoot 47% from the field and 80% from the line. So it's creeping up. I do think that going forward, we're going to see some better days efficiency-wise from Jalen Green. And I'm still kind of bullish on him moving forward. Ernie P wants to know, any issue jamming 60% of Kevin Porter Jr. out of 150 lineups? No, because once again, he's going to be really easy to pivot off if he's not in. Like, I'm totally fine with taking that stand. And I do think relative to current ownership, he's probably one of the most underowned players in tournaments.
Yes. I mean, 60% might be a little bit aggressive, but I think building lineups with him in, and then, like you said, just being ready to pivot, as long as you're willing to sit around, and do the work. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. And there's not a real opportunity cost here. I know I'm kind of bringing up some of the same points, but it's so easy to swap off him if he gets ruled out, because there's so many other good plays in the Spurs Rockets game. And it's not like you're really foregoing all that much from the Clippers Heat game to lead it off. The next question we have here is from Jets World. It's a 2v2. He wants to know Gordon and Bones Highland or Butler and Bassey on BK. That is Butler and Bassey for me.
What Gordon? Aaron Gordon?
Good question. I assume so. Just based on the salary, it would have to.
Yeah, it's got to be Aaron Gordon, right? Aaron Gordon's not really somebody I'm playing tonight. I know he's had some good games of late, but I'm fine with not having him really very much in my player pool. So I'll take the Bassey side.
Yeah, Butler and Bassey there. And Jets World did clarify that it is Aaron Gordon, which, yeah, that does make sense. I was doing some of the salary in my head. So, yeah, Butler and Bassey side. We've got a super chat here from The Claw. The Claw 28 wants to know Morris or Jabari Smith Jr. I prefer Marcus Morris.
I like Jabari.
The thing that just kind of sets Marcus Morris apart for me is just the fact that, well, actually, it also depends on the site, because actually the answer for me is Jabari Smith on DK and Marcus Morris on FanDuel, because Morris on FanDuel is $4,900, whereas Jabari Smith on FanDuel is $5,800. So okay. I'm going to hedge a little bit here just because you didn't give us a site, but if it's FanDuel, Marcus Morris, if it's DraftKings, Jabari Smith Jr. Does that make sense?
I'm cool with
Morris,
that.
Yeah, Morris.
My logic was just Jabari Smith because he's like a good basketball player, and Marcus Morris because he's a bad one.
So far this year, Jabari Smith hasn't been a good basketball player. Going forward, I like him, but I mean, talking about
he's getting it done right now. That's all I care about.
What would you wager Jabari Smith is shooting from the field this year?
I don't know, like 40%, 42.
That feels high to me. And this is just based on me watching a lot of Rockets games and watching him miss shots. Here we go. Jabari Smith is shooting 36.7% from the field.
Oh, baby.
So far this year. So yeah, it's not been great. Between him and Jalen Green, there's a lot of missed shots in that starting lineup.
He's got to be trending upwards though, right?
He can't be trending downwards. There's only one way to go. But all right, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have not liked the video and subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do that, because we are about to end the show. And also don't go anywhere, because the NFL Live Before Lock show is coming up next. And you don't want to miss tonight's primetime football game. Looks like Baker Mayfield is playing somehow.